So, welcome to Across the Pond, a conversation with David and Howard. Our guest today is Polly Bateman, an experienced mindset and performance coach with over 20 years of experience. Welcome, Polly.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Excellent. Okay, so let's jump straight in. Um, you're married to a senior military gentleman and have been jumping around the world for most of your married life, different married quarters, and I guess you needed to find something that would work while he was working and something to keep you active. And that became coaching. Tell us about your journey.
Yeah, so I didn't have to sit and just file my nails all day, hey? Or as my brothers used to joke, wander around crying in a silk dressing gown, drinking gin. Which, not that I know of any military wives that do that, but yeah, I needed something a bit more substantial. So I was working when I first met Tom, obviously. That's how I met him, through my links to the military. And it never, ever occurred to me to not work. And in fact, I often tell the story about the day my waters broke, of how I went downstairs, stood over a towel and rang everybody to say, I don't think I'll be able to see you today. I'm going to have a baby. Because even then, it hadn't occurred to me to take some time out. But very quickly, on the back of the stuff I did with Defence Medical Welfare Service, which was sitting in that place that sits between the military logistics and the medical stuff, was the handling of anybody who was human down, was a lot of sometimes that sort of grey area, a mindset stuff, the mental health, the well-being, and that very much lent into the space of coaching. It wasn't a coaching qualification, it was very different, but then it felt very normal to train up as a coach afterwards, which is what I did. And I would say, and I think I said this to you when we first connected, I would say that the coaching was pretty average for about 11 years. I was busy being a mum as well, and I was moving around, and there was sometimes being in Germany, sometimes being in the UK. There's a lot going on, and as a military wife, I was quite an involved military wife. I took my duties quite seriously. And then it got to 2016 when Tom went away for a whole year. Our only child went off to boarding school, and I had a WTF moment. Like, is this it? Like, it's like there is nothing happening in my life. And I think a lot of parents go through this when their children leave for university. I just went through it when my son was only 8. Yeah. And I recognised that I would... I wanted to make this much more involving and much more my whole reason for living, and I was going to have to take a step change at that point. But yeah, that's how I became a coach, why I became a coach, because I knew it was a mobile career, and set the scene. But I would just want to throw one thing in. I actually think the coaching decision was made many, many moons before that, as a little girl, when I just want to frame it with this. I was listening to a podcast recently of a doctor who was 106 or 102, and she had been a doctor for 80 years, and she had a 10-year plan, and it blew me away. She was such a fascinating lady to listen to.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, right. How cool to have a 10-year plan. And she said, as my eyesight goes, my insight grows, which I thought was a beautiful thing to say. And the point was that she said about her children, she said, if you look at your children, they are showing you who they're going to be. So I immediately thought of my son. Anything we ever bought him, the first thing he did was take the damn thing apart. He's now at university doing an engineering degree. Like, you could have seen that one coming when I think about it. Yeah. I remember climbing over with a hot roast chicken once saying, Harry, this really isn't the place to be doing this, as I'm stepping over his performance scooter that's now in 1,000 pieces with ball bearings going everywhere. And I'm trying to move a hot roast chicken around, That was his thing. And I think back to what I was doing. I remember I used to dress my brothers up in, I don't know why, various outfits, and send them to school where I would then teach them.
Right.
I was obviously going to be like a teacher of some kind. And when we went out for walks, we'd look at the different grasses, and then we would talk about what they could do with them when they got home. And I was obviously always into being curious about life. Because it wasn't about, like, I became a sort of, agriculturist or anything. It was anything that was around me. I was curious about it, and I wanted to grow the knowledge. And and I remember this very specific moment where we had some children coming to stay, and my mother put a newborn chick into the little boy's hand. And these kids were city kids, and they'd never experienced anything like this. And the moment of wonderment on this little boy's face, I remember observing and looking at it and thinking, that's what I want to do when I grow up.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I like
So,
that.
so,
Yeah.
so you must have come across everything from PTSD, burnout, stress, more, even sort of chronic issues. I know that many military people join the service with trauma to start with, and that through their lives in the military, they just increase that trauma. How have you dealt with this? And it must have been almost a baptism by fire in working with some of the military people.
Yeah, so they trained us very carefully, just to put that in perspective. When the job that I was doing within the military first started, it started in World War II, and our role was to be those lovely ladies, and it was very lady-led.
Tea and
We were the
biscuits.
lovely ladies that went and sat by the bedside and helped the people who were struggling with their sight because they'd had injuries to their face and things, to write letters home or to knit dollies, and it was all very much about that softer care that was very much needed for people's well-being and mental health. And then as the Treasury took over more of the funding, and St John and Red Cross, who had like made it possible for this to happen, and in the original day, many of the ladies were ladies and didn't need to be paid anyway. They were wealthy in their own right. But as that became a more serious job and the funding took over, we had to justify the existence. The company had to. So then they had to make sure that their people were trained. Were they trained in PTSD? Were they trained in counselling skills and pastoral skills and, all sorts of different elements so that we understood the processes. And so what's interesting is when I've been involved in the getting a soldier back because something's gone wrong, or getting the family to the soldier in Germany, I've been in that process both as the professional that was creating the triage system to get the family there quickly because we didn't know if the soldier would survive, and I've also been the person that's had to have my own husband called back when his mother was dying. So I've experienced it from both sides. And so there is a process in place run by people who are trained, probably, as I said, weren't in the beginning, and then life experience teaches you that you've got to train people up to be able to deal with these things. Because, once upon a time when people were struggling with PTSD, they were shot for cowardice if they ran away.
Yeah.
And now we understand, no, they need help, not punishment.
Yeah.
So it's a learning curve, isn't it? And so the training by
Right.
the time I came along was good. And we were taught about the adverse childhood experiences that lots of the military have, because any military anywhere in the world normally is a microcosm of society in itself, and you'll have all genre of human being, experience level and background coming into it. And so you do need to know what you're dealing with.
Yeah.
So yeah, I
Well,
mean,
that makes sense.
yeah, it was a
Go ahead.
baptism of
Sorry.
fire as well. You're in there with they're serious players, these people. They don't muck about.
Well, yeah, I like the idea you've had some training. And I know these days you mainly work with founders and C-suites in the corporate world, helping people rewire their subconscious. What form does that take generally, or is it unique how you do that? Tell us about it.
Well, I'd like to tell you how unique it is, but it's definitely come from a mixture of experience. So much as I would love to say it's my own magical method, I think that I'm definitely developing that as I go along. But I think for a long time, I relied on being trained. So I've done lots of different things, from NLP through to hypnotherapy, coaching certifications, then specialist hacking that you can do, that's mental hacking, soul therapy. I've done all sorts of different things. But what I found was that mostly what will change you consciously is an awareness and a recognition that a belief you had or an idea you had doesn't actually hold water in the way you thought it did. Once you know something about something that you didn't know before, it shifts your view of it exponentially. And that stuff is very exciting because everybody likes to see something different and to understand that something is not how they thought it was. But what about the stuff we couldn't see? And that was the thing that bugged me the most. So, whilst I had then recognized that who you are and who you are being are not the same thing, and that you can stretch that through your conscious awareness being evolved and changed, which is what happens when we grow up as well. There's an element of that that is just the
Yeah.
Right,
process of
right.
growing up. But then what about the stuff that it keeps happening in my life, therefore I must be the root, the common denominator, the root cause of it to some extent? And when I say root cause, I want to say that very carefully, because when bad things happen to people repetitively, the idea that they're the root cause can be a really challenging idea. But I took it on, not in a self-blamey way, but I took it on that somehow it was emanating out from me. And what did I need to do to find that? And that's when I went down a series of different modalities, one being something called belief coding and the other being something called the MAP practitioner method, or the
Mm,
MAP
okay.
method. And this is where you discovered that the emotional, so belief coding deals with the emotional imprint. So in any moment where an adverse experience gets you, there will be an emotional imprint on you in that moment. And the only way to truly re-access that is to go in via the emotional route. So when you can go in and hit it in the emotional place, then you can change it. Because when we are re-experiencing something, the learning theory, which means this is how I pick up my cup, and I've learned to pick
Right,
it up in such
right.
a way I don't throw the contents over me, mostly. That is a memory of how to pick it up from the last time I picked it up. And the very first time I picked up a cup, I wouldn't have known how to do it, but I will have been observing through experience around me, and I was being taught. And then I fine tuned that memory. So the learning theory says that everything is a memory that we do. It's a memory built on top of a memory, built on top of a memory, till we get to a level we're happy with. So it's the same with our experiences. Everything's a memory. So therefore, if you can go in, when we are repeating something, it's effectively like if this is the neural pathway, or like fixed like this, the neural pathway opens up when you're doing it and then recloses as a confirmation. But when the neural pathway, when the emotional charge is there and the memory is open, that's your opportunity to shift it right there. That's when you can go in and move some of the thoughts and feelings around it.
Yeah.
So that's the cool stuff. And then
And that's very much the, misunderstandings that we have and the limiting beliefs that we have.
that's exactly right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because and beliefs are put in place to protect us.
Yeah.
So we have some mass consciousness things that we all buy into, like don't cross the road, otherwise you're finished. And then there are some people who will have a belief that sits outside of that, not that they can walk through cars or anything, but that it's not all over. There's an iteration of you, and there is no drama and mad panic if that happens. It just means this story has finished.
Yeah.
So there are people with different beliefs. But when it comes to the map stuff, that was about going in and accessing the subconscious, where you've had an imprint put upon you which you could have inherited or was pre-consciousness, but it's definitely part of you. And that imprint has its own structure, which is the words that I've come to in observing it. And the structure of something must be recognized.
So do you use cognitive therapy in this, or do you approach it in a different way?
So there's an element of cognitive therapy going on when we're talking about anything anyway, isn't there? Because that's stretching and
Yeah.
growing the belief. But I would say it's more ontological, that what I do, which is more showing you that the difference between who you are and who you're being is something that you actually have a lot more control over.
Right.
And then when it comes to the rewiring, I'm actually not dealing with whoever you is, because you have got all your thoughts and ideas about something. So I have to bypass that. And that's when I'll deal with the superconscious, because the superconscious is kind of very laid back, is not what, it's almost like your soul. It recognizes there's no problems, there's nothing to worry about here, so it's completely neutral in its feelings. It doesn't have an opinion on whether you should, must, have to, shouldn't. It's absolutely relaxed. And therefore the subconscious mind, the gateway to the subconscious mind is through your five senses. You
Yeah.
can't get there if you don't travel through the five senses, but by going through those five senses we can get to where the root is of something. And that's when I'm talking to the superconscious, not you. But you're fully cognizant, you're aware, you're just passively
Yeah.
listening.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, it makes total sense. I was going to ask you to explain that, and I think you just did. Polly, thank you. Tell me a little bit more about your clients. I think you said before that they're typically men, 40 to 55 years of age. I guess we can say fourth stage of life. Tell us more about that.
Yeah. So in my club, I tend to have more women, and then in my one-to-ones, I tend to have
Ah,
more
okay.
men. But I think I've actually had phases where it's been more when it sort of more female heavy. Um, I think that I am naturally drawn to understanding the loneliness of leadership through having watched my husband in every job. He, as an officer, has been one of one. You know, whether he was leading his regiment, whether he was leading a brigade, whether he's leading a specialist team in something. And what I have observed is that there is a real loneliness in leadership, and that I have a huge empathy for that. My clients usually are successful. In fact, very often, by the very nature of just what it costs to work with me, there's a certain level of success going on for sure anyway. But when I say usually, what I mean is they're not a mess. They're not coming to me because occasionally I'll have somebody whose life doesn't work, but it's because they're actually looking to really get a bug out of their pants, is one thing I would say. Sometimes there's something that they just keep butting up against and they just don't know why. Like, work really works, money flows in, but they cannot tie a relationship down. Or suddenly they're going through a midlife crisis and everything they thought was working isn't. And that's by nature of the fact that we're in this stage. And a midlife crisis comes to us when we suddenly really care, and this is what I call the fourth stage, but it's when we really care about who we're communicating with, who we're connected to, and what we're contributing. And until the fourth stage, you're not actually meant to worry about those things anyway. You know, from the
Okay.
age of 10 to about 30, you're very much in the self-esteem stage. So when my son is worrying about things that I think are unimportant, I have to remind myself he's meant to worry about that stuff right now, and I am not connected to it anymore. You know, like not, I don't worry about, you know, when I go online with anything, I just won't go and watch myself so that I don't beat myself up, because I would pick on myself because I'm a bit of a perfectionist. But I know that what's the point in doing that? I'm more interested in the connection, the communication, and the contribution that any communication I'm giving might be. So I don't worry about the other stuff. Whereas when we're younger, all we worry about is what we look like, how did we sound, did we look cool, did we say the right thing? That no
Right.
longer matters, you know. So we
Yeah.
shift in our awareness. So usually my clients are in that stage. And by being concerned about connection, communication, and contribution, well, now we're putting meat on the bone to what your life is really about and how we can make it work. And that gets exciting. So it's
Yeah.
high touch, high proximity, deep work on recognizing language patterns, behavior patterns, thinking patterns, and what we can do to truly, and it takes growth in life to do this, truly get out of your own way and then get behind yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Interesting.
I know you use a real mix of, you know, positive psychology, emotional coding, NLP, hypnosis to help your clients. Where are you most comfortable yourself with such a wide variety of techniques?
Yeah, so I mean, you mentioned hypnosis. I don't use hypnosis anymore, and I don't really. You end up integrating parts of all of these things, don't
Yeah.
you? Each person will find there's one thing that you remember particularly from a modality that you've learned that you think that was genius. I love that. I'm going to take that forward with me. And so, for example, one of the things that I will use with somebody when they are really bothered by an incident is in NLP, there is something where you can pixelate images in your mind because we think in mental pictures.
Yeah.
When you mess with a
Right.
picture that is unpleasant and causing you pain, and it then doesn't cause you pain, the brain will jump to adopting the new messed up picture that doesn't have such an emotional drain on you. And it was only keeping it before because it wanted to keep you safe from it. But when it sees that the less pixelated picture causes you less pain, that's better for your survival. And
Yeah.
because your brain is a survival machine only, it will then jump to that,
Yeah.
unless the emotional charge is still present. But
Yeah.
it's about releasing the emotional charge. So there are little elements of bits that I use, but actually I like my clients to be awake and conscious and with
Yeah.
me and very aware of the changes, because there's something magical about recognizing that you've just shifted, or having that, that's why I do that. Because once you've seen it, you can't unsee it.
Yeah.
Well, this
Once
sounds
you
like anxiety treatment
well,
in a
when
way.
when stuff is bothering you or stuff is like driving your behavior but you don't know why, that will induce anxiety. And sometimes it doesn't, but you just know it doesn't work and you just get fed up of it.
Yeah.
The
Right.
one common thing in all my clients is they're kind of sick of their shit and they're ready for a change.
And I think, just to go back to your point about, not using hypnotherapy anymore, with NLP, you can more or less do everything in NLP that you can do in hypnotherapy.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And as you say, at least they're awake.
Yeah. I want them to know they've just had a massive shift. I want them to
Yeah.
feel it. But
Yeah.
the other thing sometimes is that you have to sometimes, particularly with the superconscious work, you can be giving commands to the superconscious. And then suddenly they'll say, I don't know why I'm thinking this, but all I can think about is the financial state of my parents. And suddenly I'm understanding why this thing happened. And what's happening is the brain is connecting the dots.
Yeah.
It knows which vault this is coming from and going, the reason that you have never wanted to earn more money than your dad was because than your dad ever earned. Like, I'll give you an example. I have a client who's just a beautiful human being. She's an incredible artist. Her father was an artist and he told her not to be an artist because she'd never earn any money. And her mother went to work to bring the money in, but then the marriage fell apart because she resented the fact that she had to go to work and never saw the kids. So the money messages that she's had are that for you to follow your dreams, it will cost you your relationship and it will cost you, being able to really
Yeah.
truly live.
Yeah.
So we've been
Right.
undoing all of that so that she can be the brilliant world-class artist that she actually is.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Now, I know you've worked with a lot of women, and you've got a women's group. So how do you find the difference between your male and your female clients, and how do you find the issues differ?
It's such a great question and it popped into my head so quickly as you said it. So the men are cerebral and are thinking, and to get them down into their body and feeling is the challenge. To get them still enough to feel, they'll talk their way through it, they'll strategize their way through it, they'll compartmentalize as well, and you've got to get them to stop and feel. And the women will be coming from the feelings, and you've got to get them into a bit more strategy sometimes. Yeah. So it's kind of like balancing it out. I
Yeah.
mean, that suggests that it's a cut and dry like that. Of course it isn't. I've had men come to me who are in great pain, both physically and emotionally. And I've had women who are incredible strategic thinkers, and who are already planning on where they want to be. And so you've got the anomalies where that woman, I'm thinking one woman in particular, I needed to bring her back into her body. I needed to get her to stop and think and feel stuff, so there are anomalies. Those are the sweeping generalizations that I just want to say, in case anyone's listening to this who's shouting going, that's not me, because, there's always someone who's different. But those are the general things you will notice about this.
Yeah.
And women are prepared to perhaps be a bit more spiritual and woo-woo. And, I've got a client who I literally just finished with before coming on this to meet you guys. And he calls it my woo-woo shit. He's like, that's more of your woo-woo shit, and he just laughs about it. But he's actually opening up to it more and more and more as he's beginning to join the dots on synergistic things and magical moments happening and, seeing the bigger picture. And it's sometimes men will drive from force a lot, from that masculine energy that's naturally theirs, whereas women will drive from a feminine energy, that intuitive feeling, it feels right, I think we should do this. There's different ways of weighing things up, and both have their place. And it's great when you can own both, because you are both feminine and masculine.
Yeah.
So owning both inside of us is a really important part of being the whole you.
Well, maybe I was a therapist at one time. Maybe my name should be Polly. No, I've raised three daughters. Where I'm going with that, they'll get emotional and just come unglued about something. And I'll just say, just stop. Think
Mm,
about what you're saying. It's like, what's the outcome you want out of this? Because you're all upset. You know,
mm,
let's just think through it. It's like, take a breath.
yeah,
And it works.
it does.
Now,
Because
I don't know if it works now, but
yeah,
it
well,
did
when the
back then.
feelings overwhelm us, we can't think
Right,
straight, right? You
Yeah.
right.
can't see a pathway through. And hey, let's face it, it takes hindsight to know, but things were usually perfect, and there was always a way through.
Well, I might shift gears here, Polly. My understanding is you do most of your work online,
Yeah.
100%. Whereas, well, Howard, I think, does more face to face. I don't think I'm in that position yet. But do you get enough satisfaction doing everything online?
Such a great question, because I actually have one client who does a mix when he wants to come in. And when he first started working with me, it's because he didn't want his wife to hear what he was talking about, and it wasn't that he was doing anything bad to his wife. He just wanted to be able to
Of
freely
course.
talk about some of the frustrations. He's very devoted to his wife. I just want to say that there was nothing weird going on, and he needed to come and actually spent the first few sessions shouting, just like shouting stuff out of him. But so much so
Okay.
that on one occasion when my son was in my own home, and we were in my office, he was like, "Is everything okay in there?" And I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, it's all fine." But it's it's when I'm with somebody, I'm reading them really carefully, often without knowing what I'm reading. It's just an intuitive feeling. You can really feel somebody when you're in the presence of them. When you're watching them online, I'm really observing their face, and the slightest twitch of their mouth I'll pick up, because I don't miss a trick. That's thanks to stuff that I've been through, means that I'm hyper vigilant, but I really like that skill set. But equally, I've had clients that I have coached entirely on the phone because that's how they wanted to do it.
Yeah.
And you tune in differently. You
Yeah.
then hear things in their voice.
And
Right.
and I've had this as a recruiter, for 30 years, that when I started, it was all on the phone.
Yeah.
And then I ended up doing face to face. And then of course from COVID, it was all done online on Zoom.
Yeah.
So you use a different skill set to be able to pick up the same signals, but in a different way. But certainly on Zoom, you can't see, the guy squeezing the stress ball underneath or out of sight of camera. You can't see his leg wobbling as you ask that particular question. But you pick things up in a different way. And one of the big things I've really learned is that you've really got to employ your 10-10 listening. It's not all about line of sight. It really is about listening deeply.
Hmm.
That's absolutely right. And it's a bit like, when people say they lose a sense. So if you
Yeah.
lose your sight, they know when someone's in the room because they can feel them. So
Yeah.
you tune in your other senses.
Yeah.
And we are far more highly tuned. We're much more of a receptive and we're an antennae, really, walking antennae than we realize.
And they say we have more than five senses. I mean, they say, seven or eight senses that we
Yeah.
will actually have. But
Yeah.
it's only the five that we use, day in, day out.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
it's a bit like, so I love the one about your guts, your sixth sense.
Yeah.
Where the neurons for your guts are stored is really deep in the brain. Where our wisdom sits is next door to it, really deep in the brain. And it sits there because we need the front of the brain for crossing the road, making a cup of tea, and handling the day-to-day stuff. So the wisdom is not used until we're calling on it. So what happens is when the wisdom, it's like a soothing thin wall between the two. When the wisdom is firing off, it's like you can hear the banging on the wall in the guts. So that's why we feel it in our guts, because it excites them. And it's
Let me in,
actually,
let me in.
yeah, it's a
Interesting. Yes.
neuroscientist
Yeah.
that explained that, and I heard her talking about it, and I was like, oh, that makes so much sense why we can feel it. So yeah, never ever distrust your gut feeling, peoples,
Yeah.
because it's actually your wisdom firing off, and
Yeah.
that's why you can physically feel it. But the other one I just want to throw out there as well, I don't know if you've heard of the Heart Math Institute, but they talk about the fact that emanating out from us is an 8 to 10 foot of magnetic field. And that's why I think when you walk into a room and you can tell there's been some words said in that room, an argument of sorts, you can feel it because your magnetic field's bumping into their magnetic field. And we can read that stuff whether we realize it or
Yeah.
not.
And
Yeah, I
and
think the crystal lovers will call that an aura.
Yeah.
It's like
yeah.
I can feel you. Understand you,
And
or
what did
not.
you what did you call it? You said the Heart Map Institute.
Yeah. Heart Math
Yeah.
Institute. Yeah, go and look them up. They're really fascinating. They talk about heart brain coherence and heart coherence. And when you get into a coherent state, how you can function so much better, which actually, David, goes back to what you were doing with your daughters. When we're overwhelmed with something, whether it's cerebrally or physically, we are in an incoherent state, and then we have to become coherent to be able to really function. And it's about regulation.
Yeah.
So one of you asked me earlier, was I moving to my own methodology or not? And what I'm doing through pulling all this stuff is I've begun to develop something that I'm recognizing actually works through 5 R's. The first one is to recognize, like whether you recognize something is off or not, you've got to recognize, because most of us are just being what we are being, and we don't
Yeah.
even recognize it or see it. The next thing then is you've got to begin the release of it, which the recognition begins that process. Then you have to regulate. As you lose an old operating system or MO, you've got to then regulate between the two. Then you can rewire. And then after rewiring, you reinforce. And that process has become something that I've recognized I am doing all the time with my clients. You're taking them through those 5 R's.
Excellent.
Interesting. So yeah, what I'm thinking here, Polly, is I'm going to change the subject just a little bit, but I understand you have two main offerings. If I get the prices right, 10K and 18K per annum. How and what makes those different?
So they're the same thing. It's 3 months and 6 months. So it's the 10.
Okay.
Yeah, basically, and that's the in pounds versus dollars. So it's just slightly different. But yes, it's one is that's my main one-on-one coaching container. I don't want to work with anyone for less than, I'll work with someone for 5 minutes, but I don't want to work with them for a specific outcome for less than 3 months, because it takes a while to go through those 5 R's, right?
Yeah.
You've
Yeah.
got to do the work. You can't just magically know something and then think that your whole habitual system is going to change and your behavior system. You've
Yeah.
got to own this stuff and really sit with it. So
Right.
3 months is good. 3 months will get you a lot of insight. 6 months will really settle in with the change. And then I frequently have clients stay with me for longer because they're enjoying it. Because when you
Yeah.
get empowered by your life, you want to like this works, I want to keep going.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
there's the one-on-one offering, then there is the opportunity to go into a group, and that is something I'm just completely rewriting at the moment to bring neuroscience into it and my rewiring in a group fashion. So then when people go into a group, they can do videos online and then join me for a live Q&A. So that is self-paced. And then the other thing is my membership club, but that's a slightly different. And the membership club is not just for women; it's men and women, but it's just mostly women that have ended up in there.
And that was my next question with, tell us about your membership group, because I know that, you said, or you called it how you manifest your life. So it's a monthly group, but how does it work?
Yeah, so it's I've got a really really good CMO in there, and I called it the Manifestation Club. Back when kind of manifestation was seen as quite a cool thing, but I didn't want to be like every other sort of manifestation.
Right.
I don't want to be rude about them, but just some of it was just such nonsense that was being spouted. Like, this is my 27-word script to get a G-Wagon and a jet. And you're like, really? That's what you think got it? And so I actually had a lot of integrity about this. I was like quite driven to like, we got to teach people how they are being the way they are being and what the root of them is for them to be able to actually manifest their life as they would like to. So you got to know how. You got to calibrate to the life you want, the person you want to be,
Yeah.
to be able to be it. And that's what I teach in there. So it's called the Manifestation Club, yeah. And we've actually had the doors shut. It's been going for 3 years now, and I still have founder members in there, and we're all evolving. Yeah, that was like, okay, I get it. It works. I need to
Well,
keep
that's a
going.
compliment. Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
And,
So
and is it weekly or monthly?
oh, it's weekly. No,
Wow.
they love it. They're there every week. And I've got people who set their diaries by it. Like, they will move clients around it to make sure they make it, because the live experience to them is so good. And they want to be there. And I've now that I'm rewiring people, I've really begun to bring that work to the table there as well,
Yeah,
so that they
yeah.
really get the benefit of that, and they're loving it.
So
That
David,
actually sounds exciting. Go ahead.
yeah,
Sorry.
David has a thing insofar as that he always says, your best teachers are your clients.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Oh
so
yeah.
do you use this as a as a teaching mechanism for yourself?
Absolutely. I mean, like,
Right.
come on, if I thought I'd arrived, I would need my head checking, right?
Yeah.
There is no nirvana and you've never nailed it all. But what I've
Yeah.
noticed, two things. One, sometimes when I'm teaching a point, suddenly a new version of the point falls out of my mouth and I realize I've learnt it better because I've been teaching it again and again.
Yeah.
So like I finally really understood it. I might have more intellectually understood it to how I suddenly got it. And I didn't even know I didn't fully have it before until I expressed it differently. I
Yeah.
thought,
Yeah.
oh, that's deeper the way I've just said that. So yes, I recognize that's happening. I'm very
Okay.
honest about it. I will say to my clients, I don't have this all figured out. I'm just a gnat's knacker ahead of you,
Yeah.
and that's important. So that's the one thing, is recognize that you are always learning, because I have
Yeah.
not arrived.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have not
Oh,
swallowed the
yes.
book
Oh,
of
yes.
knowledge. But the second thing I would say is they drive me. I'm like, oh, I've got the club this week. I better have some good content. So that pushes me to
Yeah.
ensure I've had good content and to create something new. And I'm so grateful for that, because in the cycle of life, I might be in the coaching seat, but it doesn't mean shit doesn't happen to me. And it
Yeah.
doesn't mean therefore I don't
Right,
need
right.
to, keep using my own tools on myself.
Yeah. And I know with David, I mean, he's said to me in the past that, he gives his clients quite often, okay, what do you want to talk about next week? And they'll pull something down completely random. He said, okay, we'll talk about that next. He then spends the next week just researching everything. So he's got some idea about what they're going to be talking about.
Yeah.
I've got one last question for you.
Okay.
What advice would you have given yourself as a younger coach starting out that you can share with everybody today? Um,
Mm.
what piece of advice would you give your younger self or others just
Yeah.
starting out in the coaching world?
Good question. Yeah.
It's a really good question. And actually, I would speak to the space that says be really careful when you get your first coaching qualification. It's like, it's great, right? Well done. Like, the tougher the qualification, especially if it's not 10 quid off Amazon, not quite Amazon, but you know what I mean? There are some really cheap ones out there. I've watched people go and get £10 cheap coaching certifications and think they know it all.
Yeah,
I'm like, just be careful, right? I'm deeply experienced at this point, and it's taken 26 years of coaching to know I'm experienced. And I recognize that there is still lots for me to learn. So
yeah,
just remember that, you have the privilege of dealing with someone else's life, and it's a privilege to walk them through that. And that
Mm.
you owe being the best listener that you can be to support them, and you work to stay ahead of your game. Don't think you've arrived and that you know it. But also, that sort of is like a warning shot. Also is like, just remember you're human, and you don't have to know it all. It's okay to lead with honesty. So my clients have watched me go through, particularly the members of the club, they've watched me go through some pretty tough life things. I have sat and cried in front of them. Not because I had fallen apart. This was when my cat had been stolen and then returned dead, and I was really upset. And I have also cancelled a session because it was a Tuesday night when she came back, and I hold my club on a Wednesday, and I realised I just was not in the space, and I wrote to them all and said, I can't do tonight. I'm really sorry. I got to do me, and they are, I've earned the credit in the bank to be able to pull those kind of like
yeah,
late moves with them, for sure. And you have to earn that. But it's okay to be human, because the human experience, I've got this saying, I think I said this at David when we first spoke. I really feel like the soul comes to life for the same reasons the body goes to the gym, to rip and grow. And so don't think you won't be ripping and growing at the same time.
oh, it never stops, does it?
No,
Um,
it
and
really doesn't.
and and here's the interesting thing, and we haven't actually said it online, but both myself and David are actually doing the AJC coaching school this year. So it's aimed predominantly at senior coaches to basically take them to the next level.
Yeah,
So it's supposed to be a 6 month sort of journey, but I mean it's already started. It doesn't start officially until September, but
Right.
they're already throwing content at us, and I suppose the theme at the moment is very much, grow and generate revenue so that it pays for the course itself. Does that make sense?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, of course, we do that, don't we? As soon as we've got a new skill set, it becomes a new offering. And
Yeah,
then the
Right,
offer,
right.
the person who needs that offer, you start to become the magnet to it because,
yeah.
when it's there on the table, it's like putting cookies on a table. Watch the people
Watch
arrive.
them disappear. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Polly, thank you so much for coming along today. That
Yes.
has been awesome.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I think I love what you're doing. I love the idea that coaches get together and chew on stuff, because
Yeah.
there's collectively a lot of information out there and a lot of knowledge, and it's a great thing to share for people to listen to.
And
Coaching's
there are so many different disciplines out there as well.
Yeah, yeah, right. And you need different things. It's like the different cogs in a watch are needed for their different jobs. We
Yeah.
need lots of different coaches and we need lots of people.
right.
And people are waking up because, no athlete would dream of trying to be the best athlete that they could be in their chosen sport without having an outside observer. They know they need a coach. Human
Right.
beings are waking up to that.
Yeah. I mean, a good example is, a tennis player. They might be young and be seen as the person who gets the ball across the net, but when the hard stuff really starts happening, they need a coach to help them with their serve. They need another coach to help them with another part of what they're doing, because nobody's got all of the answers.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right. And it's about, that's why some people, they'll come and work with me for a bit and then they'll go on and do something with someone else. It doesn't mean I didn't complete the journey that I set out to do with them
Yeah.
or that I was the full
Right.
answer. It's just that's the season that they needed to be with me.
You just got them to an awesome serve. There you go.
Yeah, yeah,
Exactly.
exactly.
Polly, thank you very much.
Thank you. Cool. Okay.